as you look at the data here in terms of concerns about rich and poor, as you look at the
Still need the clicker, thank you. Okay, so as you look at the data, I think it's really interesting as you look at the data between the rich and the poor here. It's interesting to hear you see this, that for the most part, every region has thought that this idea that technology has widened the gap. However, as you look at it, particularly interestingly at the Middle East and Africa, I thought the one number that was really stood out was this idea of Egypt. I mean, this is a country that has used technology to overthrow their government, okay? And 69% of people here thought this was a great way to use technology to shrink the gap between the rich and the poor. So as you see here, there is this concern. However, I think those countries that have used technology to truly move their way forward have seen major differences here. I think the other thing that you're seeing is this challenge between men and women. I think women in particular are less likely than men to say that they feel like they're on the cutting edge of technology. 80% of men thought they were on the cutting edge of technology, 69% of women thought they were on the cutting edge. And as you look at kind of whether technology has been influential in shaping their life, 40% of men and 22% of women. So I think overall we tend to see, in politics you tend to see a gender gap. And here in the United States, men slightly vote for Republicans, women tend to vote for Democrats. But here you're starting to see what we're going to call a technology gender gap between people who say, men who say they slightly feel more on top of the game when it comes to technology versus women. Let's talk a little bit about what makes them tick. I think what's interesting, as I said, is you look at it, I think Western Europe, North America, obviously the economy is very strong. As you look through every other region, except for North America and the Middle East, you're really looking at this idea of social inequality is very concerning to them. As you look at Western Europe, social inequality is second. Latin America, it's first. Asia, social equality. Central and Eastern Europe, social equality. Remains a big issue. But the thing I love about the United States is they don't really care about social inequality. They're just focused on the economy, they're focused on jobs, but social inequality is not a major issue. I think as you get into Middle East and Africa, overall you're seeing high levels of concern around terrorism, political unrest. As you can see from what's happened in the last couple of weeks, particularly in countries like Turkey, a lot of focus here on just political unrest, stability, regime change, and things like that. Really tells you everything you need to know. But again, this is very heavily dominated by the economy and social inequality. This tells you that probably we should all move to Asia at this point. 65% of Asians thought the region was on track, and 65% thought the global economy was on track. And as you look at throughout here, even countries and regions that are experiencing decent levels of growth remain very concerned. Latin America, North America, Western Europe, exceedingly troubled economy, exceedingly negative feedback here in particular, and then some concerns in Middle East and Africa. But overall, these are very challenged and very negative scores. This is a generation that's very concerned about the economy in general. And then if you look at it, people actually feeling that their country's best days are ahead. Only 47% of North American millennials said that. Only 41% of Western Europeans. But interesting, if you look to the left-hand side of the chart, 93% of Chinese millennials thought their country's best days were ahead. 91% of Saudi Arabians, and 90% of Chileans. So it's interesting, you can clearly see the differences between where they live and how they view the future and how confident they are about it. I think what's interesting, sometimes young people have been typecast in the past about worrying about frivolous things. But this is not a generation that's worried about frivolous things. I think, the stereotypes of girls talking about whether they're going to be able to find a boyfriend, or guys talking about sports, or whatever it may be. What you're actually seeing is 2/3 of these people are already concerned about the challenges of moving from school to the workplace. Basically, are they going to be able to find a job? They can do their part, they can get through school, they can study, they'll pass their tests, but that doesn't assure them the ability to get a job. And I think what you have seen, despite in the last couple of years, the massive decline in job creation that's happened in North America and Western Eastern Europe, in particular, has had a real impact on this generation, whether they feel like they can actually get a job. And so that's a pretty big thing that weighs on them pretty heavily. And I think what also was very interesting when we looked at it, 39% of these people, now most of them have never worked a day in their lives or already concerned that they won't have enough money to retire, okay? They have 60 years to work, okay? Now most of them are going to live even longer, so maybe they say they have 70 years to work, okay? 40% of them are already concerned they're not going to have enough money to retire, okay? It's just amazing. It just tells you how negative many of them truly are. And then I think what's also, as I said here in particular, we asked people, which of the following in terms of, is it a right or is it a privilege? 82% thought it was your ability to choose who you want to marry was a right. 79% thought it was a right to vote. But as you look further down here, 66% thought healthcare was a right. And as we said here, in terms of this idea of being entitled and putting up your feet at your desk at the office, only a bare majority of these people thought it actually was a right to have a job. So this clearly shows the impact the global recession has had on these people. As I said here, as we kind of get toward the end of the presentation, as you look through here, this group, given their humanistic values and how kind of idealistic they still are, said what's the key driver of change? Education, environment, and helping eliminate poverty are the top three things. Now, if you asked a group of C-suite executives, how would you say this? I doubt that they would say this. You imagine you'd be seeing trade. I imagine you'd be seeing tax policy. I assume you'd be seeing a whole range of things here that aren't truly what these folks are saying. So I think, again, this is the types of answers you would expect to see from young people who are looking for, education, environment, poverty, all of those issues that tend to be slightly more base issues for Democratic Party truly do resonate with this group. And then also, and kind of just overall, what did people think was the most important study of choice? Technology has surpassed economics, has surpassed foreign language. Everybody always used to say when we were in school, maybe you should take Spanish, maybe you should learn another language. Now they're teaching, well, maybe you should figure out how to use technology. Or maybe you should take calculus. Well, they don't even say that so much anymore. So I think in particular, it's important that you understand and learn how to use technology. Then as we go through here, kind of what are the opportunities? 68% of this generation thought they had opportunities to be an entrepreneur. Obviously lower in Western Europe. Amazingly, 91% of Saudi Arabian millennials, 87% of Indian millennials, and 81% of South Africans in particular thought they had a great opportunity to be an entrepreneur in their country. And I think entrepreneurship is a very important thing to them. And then again, looking at who can make a difference, 62% of them thought they had the ability to make a local difference. 45% thought they had ability to participate in their political system, which I thought was still a pretty good score for a lot of these markets, which for the most part aren't democracies. And then, there was still just 40% of people thought they could make a global difference. And I'll show you here on the next slide, actually, this is local difference here in particular. North America, Latin America, very much more so on the lead here. And then as you look at make a difference in the political system, North America, again, Latin America, and also Middle East, Africa, less so in Europe, where obviously governments, for the most part, have lost faith with a lot of their people here, just because of the economy. And then here, as I said, as you look at kind of where is the optimism, as you look here, in terms of the belief that they can make a global difference, you see the United States, you see Mexico, and you see Latin America is very strong in terms of optimism about making a global difference. Argentina tends to be sort of a challenging country within Latin America, given the government situation they have there. But as you go through Europe, you can just see it's a general challenging marketplace in terms of the ability for young people to be optimistic. And then the most optimistic country in the world right now in terms of being able to make a global difference is Colombia, which is a truly amazing market if any of you have been to Colombia in particular. One last thing I want to touch on, then I want to turn it over to the panel. We looked at, it's interesting, if you're a researcher and you try to understand demographics and who influences who, what you tend to do is in a country like the United States or in Europe, you look at two issues. You look at their socioeconomic situation, you look at their education, you look at their income. Here, you can't look at that here because they basically, for the most part, have very little to no income. They have some education, but have not been able to earn enough. But we've seen that there are three general trends that will dictate who will become a true leader in this generation. We say, are these people going to be able to, will they describe themselves as on the cutting edge of technology? Do they believe they can make a global difference? And also, do they believe that they can be an entrepreneur? These three characteristics we believe at the end of the day will help determine whether these people will be leaders in their generation or not. So technology, local difference, and then also entrepreneurship. And then here what we did was overall, this group is around 11% of the sample. And as you look through these markets, this will tell you where the largest preponderance of these quote leaders are. So as I said, the most optimistic country in the world in terms of millennials right now is Colombia, and it has the largest amount of these leaders in their market. So 27% of all millennials within Colombia, we are determining that they will likely become major leaders inside of their generation, followed by Peru, followed by Saudi Arabia, Chile, Venezuela, and also India. Mexico and South Africa are in the top 10, and then followed by Brazil, US. So I think as you look at this in particular, where are the most amounts of millennials that we think are going to be leaders, the country is probably going to be India by a wide margin. And then in particular, what we're seeing here is among these people who are millennial leaders that we're calling the top 10% of the generation, technology is an up-and-coming driver of influence for them. Family, school, friends, obviously not a surrogate. They can remain very strong, but technology is moving up in particular. And then just here on the last slide, this truly will help you show that technology is really making them more optimistic. They have a good comfort level, and then what kind of access do you have to all these things? So I think in particular, as they surround themselves with more technology, they're becoming more optimistic and they become more empowered. So I wanted to take this amount of time and then leave a good amount of time for the panel, but this is just a general view of how millennials view technology, how they view the world, and how the types of millennial leaders that we think we'll see in the future. So I'd like to turn it over to the panel. Thank you.